Assalamu alaikum. So today the topic of our discussion is the diabetes mellitus. Okay, so diabetes mellitus is somehow can be mixed with the diabetes insipidus. Okay, so I am just telling the difference between the diabetes mellitus and diabetes insipidus. So diabetes mellitus DM is related to insulin and sugar. Okay, it is related to insulin and sugar level, and insulin hormones and sugar level or glucose level. Okay, but diabetes insipidus, which is related to hormone which is not insulin, but this hormone is ADH. Okay, and is related to water regulation. Okay, not glucose and sugar regulation. Okay, it is related to water regulation. So this is the difference. The other difference, this is the main difference. And now come to the diabetes mellitus, which is the main topic. I just want to tell you the difference between these two. Okay, so diabetes mellitus, the diabetes mellitus is a disease in which the person has insulin defect or sugar metabolism or glucose metabolism defect. Okay, it means there is a large amount of when the glucose level is increased. Okay, high level of glucose lead to this disease. High level of high level of glucose is related to diabetes mellitus. Okay, so there are two type of diabetes mellitus, the type 1 and type 2. What is type 1? In the type 1 there is a decreased production of insulin. So when the insulin is decreased, the glucose level will be decreased, because the normal insulin function is to decrease the glucose level. Okay, but when a person has insulin, but this insulin is non-functional due to some receptor defect, this will cause diabetes type 2. So simple word, diabetes 1 is the one in which insulin is decreased but the receptor and functioning is normal. So a person can be treated with the outside injection of insulin. So but the type 2 is a disease in which the insulin may be present or may not, but the receptor mechanism and the functioning of insulin is defective. Okay, so the second difference is that the diabetes 1 is normally the mainly the genetic. Okay, and so it is, as it is genetic, it's normally occur in the children and young person before the 30 age. Okay, but the diabetes 2 is age related, which is mostly occur after the 30 years. Okay, the second difference is the weight loss and weight gain. The weight loss occur in type 1, diabetes mellitus type 1, weight loss, but weight gain is occur in diabetes type 2. So obesity, when you have the obesity with a high with the age above the 30 years, you will simply say this is the type 2. Okay, the diabetes type 1 is related to diabetes ketoacidosis. So ketoacidosis is the disease in which the ketone bodies are formed. So in the lipid metabolism, if you want to know what is ketone bodies, see my lecture and on the lipids, on the ketones. Okay, and I have explained everything on the ketones there. Okay, so in the ketoacidosis, the ketone bodies are formed. One of the ketone body is called the acetoacetate, also called acetoacetic acid. So this acetoacetic acid, which is a ketone, this is an acid, and this is the reason it will lead to acidity. So acidity due to ketone is called ketoacidosis. Okay, so person with diabetes 1 has ketoacidosis. Why? In simple word I can say that ketone bodies production occur, okay, when there is a decreased level of insulin. So this line will help you that type 1 there is a decreased level of insulin, so there will be increased level production of the ketone. So when increased production of ketone, it causes ketoacidosis. But type 2, insulin is present but not functioning. So insulin is present, still present, so there will be no formation of ketone body, and this there will be no, very good, there will be no sense of ketones and no ketoacidosis. Okay, so this is very important in differentiating between these two. The second, the one another thing is the absence of fatty liver in the type 1, but there is a fatty liver in type 2, which will mostly occur. Okay, and the last one is insulin, as diabetes 1 is related to insulin deficiency, so person can be treated by the insulin. Okay, so the type 1 is insulin required, by type 2 it doesn't require insulin, it requires exercise to decrease the obesity. This depend on many other aspects. So if we want to treat the diabetes 2, we will treat the cause. Okay, which is the cause of diabetes 2. So Pathophysiology is I explain in the word, so just in written form, there may be genetic defect or viral infection. In the genetic defect, the person may have antibodies production against his pancreas beta cell, because pancreas beta cell are the cell which produce insulin. So when there is a antibodies production against the pancreas beta cell, there will be destruction of the beta cell. When there is a destruction of the beta cell, there will be no insulin, and we call this the diabetes mellitus. Okay, so there may be genetic cause and there may be viral infection. Both cause the autoimmune response. Okay, because viral infection has the antigenic system. When there is antigenic system, it will cause the activation of antibody system, and antibodies when act on the beta cell, it destroy the beta cell, and all this happen. Okay, so now come to the signs and symptoms. Okay, signs and symptoms of this disease. If the person has insulin deficiency or non-functioning insulin, there will be high glucose. So let me just try how insulin function. Okay, this is the blood vessel in which glucose are present. Okay, this is glucose molecule. There is a liver. There is a liver here which has receptor here. Okay, there is a adipose tissue. I'll just I just found this. This is the adipose tissue, and this is the muscle, which also has these channel which are die on the liver, adipose tissue, and muscle. These are called GLUT4. Okay, insulin act on GLUT4 receptor. Which receptor? GLUT4 receptor. Okay, which are insulin dependent. And this, when there is a high level of glucose, there is a production of insulin. Okay, and insulin act on these receptors and cause this glucose to enter into these tissue. Okay, so insulin dependent glucose uptake by the liver, adipose tissue, and muscle occur. So this will cause the decrease in the level of blood glucose, and blood glucose decrease toward the normal value. So this is how insulin is normally functioning in our body. Okay, what happen when glucose is come into the liver? This glucose can be degraded by the glycolysis. Then this glucose can be converted into the proteins, and this can be converted into glycogen. This can be converted into lipids. So how can we decrease the glucose level? Okay, if we have a large amount of glucose here, okay, if we want to decrease this glucose, how can we decrease? First, we can degrade this glucose. So when we degrade the glucose level decrease. So degradation of glucose is called glycolysis. So if we want to decrease, insulin causes glycolysis to occur. How can we degrade this glucose other than glycolysis? We can convert this glucose into lipids. Okay, so when glucose is converted into lipid, the glucose level decrease. This is the action of insulin. And how can further we can decrease glucose? We can convert this glucose into proteins or amino acids. Okay, which are glucogenic mostly. Amino acids. Okay, so when amino acids are formed from the glucose, this glucose level will decrease. Okay, how can further we decrease this glucose? We can convert this glucose into a combined form which is called glycogen. So this is whole functioning of insulin. How insulin function? Insulin can convert this glucose into lipids, amino acid, glycogen, or glycolysis. Okay, all of these processes occur in the liver. In the muscle, what happens? In the muscle, only glucose can be glycolysis occur here, and can be converted into glycogen. So these two processes occur in the muscle. In the liver, all processes these occur. Okay, in the what occur in the adipose tissue? These insulin, when cause this glucose to convert into lipid in the liver, this liver then release this glucose. When the glucose is converted into liver in the lipid, when glucose is converted into the lipid under the supervision of insulin in the liver, this lipid when formed in the liver, this lipid is transported, and this transport in the blood, and then this is again transported to the adipose tissue, and adipose tissue store the lipid. Okay, so when it store the lipid, it means glucose converted into lipid, and lipid are stored in the adipose tissue. So when glucose converted into lipid, so glucose level will be decreased because it is now converted into the lipid, no glucose is present. Okay, so this is the whole mechanism how insulin is functioning, and how if there is a defect in these receptor, there will be no conversion of glucose into glycogen, lipid, amino acid, and this level will remain high. Okay, now come to signs and symptoms, and our topic will be completed. When when the insulin level will be decreased and non-functioning, there will be no conversion of this glucose into another compound, or this degradation of which is called glycolysis will not occur. The glucose level will increase. So high glucose level, when there is a high glucose level, what happen? The kidney, which normally filter this blood and reabsorb all the 100%, almost 99.9%, okay, or 100%, you can say, glucose which is filtered by the kidney is reabsorbed. But when there is a huge amount of glucose, kidney cannot reabsorb all the amount. So if the glucose level increase above the transport maximum, okay, and renal threshold value, if it increase above the renal threshold value, which is 180 milligram, okay, per deciliter, if the glucose level increase above the renal threshold is the value above which the glucose level will be in the urine. Okay, so if the glucose level above the renal threshold, the glucose will come into the urine and cause glucosuria. Okay, so when glucose in the urine is present, it causes osmotic pressure, because glucose is a osmotic substance. So when it causes osmotic pressure, it attach the water with it and cause the very huge amount of water release from the body, and it also called polyuria. And when there is a polyuria and huge water is released, it will lead to dehydration. Okay, water will be lost in the from the body, so water level will be decreased in the body, which is dehydration. When there is a dehydration, it will cause the polydipsia, which is the increased thirst. Okay, polydipsia increased thirst. And at the same time, when the tissue does not get the glucose, tissue thinks that the level of glucose is decreased in the body, that's why we are not getting glucose. But the reality is that these receptors not functioning. So when the receptor not functioning, this glucose is not transported in these tissues, and these tissues think that we have decreased level of glucose, and so the person become very the appetite of person will increase, and this will lead to polyphagia. So this was whole the topic, and I think I explained the main point in this topic. If you like the video, please like and subscribe my channel, and hope so we'll meet soon. Then goodbye.